Hi everyone, it's me, Little Bird. So this channel is for my testimony that Creator exists in our lives and that darkness surrounds us. My previous videos were about my teen years. When I turned 18, I went to Fort St. John, British Columbia. And I was working in a bar illegally because you have to be 19. And when I was working in this bar, this gentleman came, this young guy, and introduces himself to me as Brian Michael Wolf. And I laughed because it was the first person I've ever met that gave me his first, middle, and last name upon meeting. The next day, I told Brian to leave because I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was just looking for sex. I didn't want to have my heart broken again. I didn't want to be used by anybody. So I decided that I was going to be the one that used people. And then on December 10th, Brian came back. And from that day, he didn't leave my life. And I thought, wow, this is really weird. I said, you know, the day that you came to me was the anniversary of my grandmother's death, December 4th. And the day that you came back to me was the anniversary of her birth, December 10th. And I said, you know what's really weird? Is that you have the name, the exact same spelling when I seen his ID. Because I thought that it was just a Wolf, W-O-L-F. Until I seen his last name, W-O-L-F-E. I said, I seen that name 6 months ago. He goes, oh yeah, what'd you think about it? I said, I thought that it was a very strong name and it was really cool. So Brian and I, like all relationships, you know, when we start out, we start to get to know each other. And I was asking him about his parents. He always spoke about his mom, but he never spoke about his dad. And he said, there's not very much to tell. So my dad's name is Randy, and he is from this little reserve in Alberta over by Valley View. And I was like, Sturgeon Lake? He says, yeah, that's it. He goes, why, do you know it? And I jumped out of bed and I ran into the bathroom and I wanted him to leave. And he didn't understand why, and I told him that both of my parents' bloodlines are from Sturgeon Lake. And he's like, that doesn't mean that we're related. I said, I've always been told never to date anybody from Sturgeon Lake because I'm related to a majority of the people there. And he said, well, we'll find out. My grandma lives here, and she's the one that's from Sturgeon Lake. So we go over and we meet with his grandma. His grandma says, okay, I can get to the bottom of this. I'll let you know whether or not you guys are related. She said, who are your grandmas? So I told her. My dad's mom is Sophie Moses. And Flo says Kiwaso. And I said, my mama's mom is Elizabeth LaRock. And she smiles and she says, Campbell. And then she turns to her husband and she says, Lou, God is good. God answers prayers. And she grabs my hands and she's like, you're a blessing. You are a blessing. You are an answered prayer. I said, what are you talking about? I just want to know whether or not me and my boyfriend are related. And she tells me that she and both my grandmothers were best friends growing up when they all lived on the reserve, when their families all lived on the reserve. And like all little girls, they had made this pact that when their children had children, or when they had children, their children would get together and have children. She said, but that was difficult for them because there was 3 of them. And when my mom and my dad got together, she was a little sad because she remembered what she had said when she was little. So knowing that I was the granddaughter of her 2 best friends growing up was a blessing to her. I mean, that I was sent to her grandson by God. And then I went and told her. And I met Brian. Brian gave me all 3 of his names. Said, I've heard those names. I heard his first and his middle name when I was 8 years old. I said, that was the names that I had chosen for my son. She says, God works in mysterious ways. I said, that's not it. I said, 6 months ago when I was in Alberta and I was leaving school not to return, I was standing looking at the grad photos and I'd seen this picture of a friend of mine named Tammy, and I seen that her last name was Wolf with an E. And she and her husband look at Brian. Brian looks at me, and because I hadn't told him about any of this, I just said that I'd seen his name. And I told them that when I seen that name, I thought that it was a cool name, a cool way to spell wolf. And wolves are strong. And I seen that name is a very strong name. God did place us together. He let me know when I was 8 years old that I was going to have a husband named Brian Michael. And after I had been healed at 18, when I was finished school, from all the bad medicine curses that were on me at that time, he showed me my last name, my future last name. And Brian and I had a rocky start. We had we had the same experiences with our fathers. So we wanted the same things in life. Our sense of adventure and our humor, like, we matched. And then things would happen and he would drink. And when he would drink, he would turn into a different person. You see, Brian never let go of any of the hurt that he had when he was a child. And because he never let go of any of these spirits that are surrounding him, they managed to interrupt our life time and time again. But I knew this man was sent to me by God. So it didn't matter what he did. I knew he was going to be the father of my children. I knew in my heart. So when Brian cheated on me, I forgave him. When Brian abandoned me for a weekend to go drinking, I forgave him. And even though I was hurting, I wouldn't allow myself, most of the time, not to listen to those negative thoughts. I chose to hold on to love. And when Brian went to jail, I was there for him. When Brian didn't have a place to stay because he had assaulted me and my father wouldn't forgive him, I chose to stay with him in a shelter. When he didn't have a place to stay because my dad wouldn't accept him in the house, I chose to go with him to a detox center. And then when he wanted to change his life, I chose to go to treatment, even though I didn't have a drug and alcohol problem, so that I could learn how to help him. And then when we wanted to get married and we were living in sin, we went to church with his grandma and we got baptized together. And that strengthened our relationship, I thought. It would strengthen it. But the devil, he doesn't like to lose that hold that he had on us. And Brian never let go of all that pain and suffering he had. So Brian was surrounded by darkness that put wedges in between us. And I wouldn't let go. And after he came out of jail this one time and he had absolutely nothing, he told me that he wanted to marry me. And I told him, yes, I'll marry you. So I married him, but I wouldn't take his last name. Because statistically, 75% of marriages ended before or after the first 5 years. But we got married in June of 97.